Greetings and welcome to another video. Today I want to have a discussion about Final Fantasy XIV players leaving the game. Is that actually a fact, or is that something people are just subjectively feeling? And yeah, therefore we want to take a look at the video from Cole Evyx, one of my best Final Fantasy XIV content creator friends out there. So a shout out to Cole Evyx. If you haven't subscribed to his channel, please do so. He's an awesome content creator. He's covering basically all the news, patch stuff, everything that's getting released. You can definitely see on Cole's channel being talked about and having guidance about. So definitely leave him a sub if you haven't done so yet. But yeah, his video is called Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker Content Calamity, Players Quitting, which is taking place in Final Fantasy's patch 6.48. So let's check this out.
I can say that I felt it keenly in-game. Like the canary in the coal mine, something's wrong. Endwalker has been a breathtaking expansion with twists and turns in its story that honestly caught me off guard and had touching moments that genuinely brought me to tears.
Yes.
It will be a storyline that I carry with me for a very, very long time.
Oh yes, oh yes.
But, and it's a massive Nicki Minaj size, but Endwalker's content after patch 6.0 from 6.1 onwards has been concerning from a content longevity and incentives perspective. Numbers were just released from the Lucky Banjo census, which has been a long-running census for Final Fantasy XIV for years and years and years, which has showcased the player base activity numbers, and we are definitely beyond a shadow of a doubt on a downswing. If we're realistic, these numbers are still absolutely healthy, so do not let a bar graph confuse you or get you worried. I'm not worried about Final Fantasy XIV closing or server shutdowns at all.
This seems off here though.
The numbers. Blue is the number of characters with the first recorded achievement in that time period. Green is the number of characters with no confirmed achievements after that time period. And then red is the number of characters whose achievements were confirmed during that time period.
Okay, that's where some of the mistakes have to be taken place, because if you take Q2, which is definitely the patch 6.4, there had to be number of achievements. All the raiders would get some achievements here. And yeah, that doesn't make sense. The difference between Q4 and Q1 is also very strange, because I believe in Q1 we actually had a quite significant participation because of top, because of the 24-man raid, which was very, very popular, and I think it's an awesome raid. Even though I'm not a big fan of the storyline, it's kind of a bit weird. We're kind of making fun of the gods and don't see them really as gods anymore, and I think the whole storyline lacks some depth in it, and that's my biggest point and problem with it. But overall, the design of the raid and the boss is still awesome. I love it. I'm really excited about the new 24-man raid coming in maybe 2 weeks, hopefully. But yeah, as you can see, there's definitely a mistake here, and I don't think that the shift from Q4 to Q1 is actually true here.
Red for the 2023 Q1 dipped significantly below earlier values. I'm not trusting the last data point after that because it looks like some kind of error happened, but we can see a clear significant drop-off in players at a much steeper slope than Heavensward or Stormblood. To reiterate, this does not mean in any way that the sky is falling down or that we need to be in a state of panic, but it does confirm what I myself have been saying for the past little while. Like 6 months ago, I said that Final Fantasy XIV is in a bad state. In fact, I'd argue in terms of content that can engage and retain players, it may be in the worst state it's ever been in. Now, before you come at me telling me how I'm wrong for saying that, we know that the launch of the next expansion, Dawn Trail, is in summer of next year. That has been stated by the developers very clearly.
And that's a big problem. To be absolutely fair with you guys, it's not a problem for you as a player, because I strictly agree on the confirmation on the sentence and philosophy that you can play other games. But it does mean when a game feels like a dead game for a long time, it kind of turns into one. And that's definitely a big problem, because you could see that on WoW, you could see that on other games in the past. If players are feeling that the game is dead, they are actually turning it into that game, because there are other players joining and think like, hey, why is nobody playing here? Why doesn't my queue pop up? Or why can't I join a raid? Why can't I find a raid party or anything like that? And that leads to players not playing the game because they can't find people to clear content with. Or it's definitely a spiraling thing that has a snowball effect in it, which definitely is an indication of a dead game becoming a dead game because people feel like it's a dead game. So that's definitely not something people are doomsaying about. It's becoming a real fact as soon as the whole awareness about the game is getting into that idea and impression of, hey, it's falling down, it's dying, players are leaving, content creators are negative about it. It's always like that. You could see that on WoW, and I think now Final Fantasy is kinda in the same spot there.
Meaning that we have roughly a year to go in with what we have right now today. Okay, yes, we'll get 6.5. We know that there's going to be some content added there, but that's it. That's like basically it.
Yeah,
like
that's it. Exactly.
Oh, folks, there's not like a patch 6.6 and then 6.7 in there. I don't know about you, but to me particularly, that is a pretty big concern after seeing these numbers. Unless there is going to be a, say, surprise mass revival through Final Fantasy XIV going viral again, we may very well be in for a rough next 8 or possibly even more months ahead of us.
Yeah. Okay, to be fair, we have the FanFest in London that is also coming at the end of October, so this will definitely make quite a decent hype about the game again, and calling out big waves. And I think the FanFest in Japan in January, I think this will be the big one with the final trailer for the patch, for the expansion, and the final some gameplay stuff, maybe more ideas and footage of how the graphic update will look like and how the content will look like, and might actually hype players up a bit more. And we also have all the big games dropping out attention, like people have played through Starfield, people have played through the DLC of Cyberpunk. So I guess we could see an uprise in January again, even though we have no content coming from the game itself.
Or people think that I'm trying to dunk on a game that I really love with developers that I love, even if they have no idea I even exist, or like hate on Final Fantasy XIV because apparently that's popular. I've been raising my concerns for like months.
I hope that we can finally come to the point that nobody that is criticizing these assumptions or these circumstances is hating the game. We love the game. It's quite the contrast. We love the game. We want the game to be as strong as ever before, or even stronger. And that's why we're pointing out some obvious problems that definitely have indication value here. It's not like we're doomsaying and we're going onto the negative route to let the game look bad because we want that. We don't want that. Believe everyone doing this content, Zeppler, Cole, Mr. Happy, Xeno, whoever is talking about the game, is ranting about the game. It would be the worst for all these content creators to have the game be in a bad state. So there's definitely no agenda that they would force onto this and would talk about to make it actually happen. We want the game to improve. We want the game to be strong and as strong as ever before, and maybe even outperform WoW again. Because Dragonflight is decent. We can't ignore the fact that Final Fantasy XIV has always been the rival of WoW, and people have mixed and matched these games. In my opinion, play them both, because both have absolutely different strong points and weak points. And you can basically satisfy your gameplay interests in both of these games by playing both of them, or just going back and forth. That's also something you could do. You could now drop after patch 6.5 has been released and play WoW again. And it can play drop WoW again when you feel like, hey, I'm hyped for the expansion now. So definitely don't look at this in a tribal war. Nobody wants to hate on the game. We actually just want to make the game a bit better with our feedback. And I think that's the biggest, strongest point that this game already always had as backup, because Square Enix listened to the player and content creator and whatever feedback, and I feel like they kind of dropped this a bit. They are not listening to feedback in the way that they used to, and that was where the game actually developed into the strong game that we know from Shadowbringers and the start of Endwalker or end of Stormblood even. Even Heavensward. It's a phenomenal expansion, and they have listened to feedback, player feedback before that too. So definitely not a bad thing to talk about this in a negative way when we want to make it better, actually, and want to improve certain things that are flawed. And there are things that are flawed. You have to accept it. It's not a bad game. It's still the best game in some parts. Yeah, definitely. As a starter, if you start the game, never played it before, you have a big stockpile of content that you can play, and that's awesome. That's quality content that's not warmed up. It's the OG Final Fantasy XIV content that you should play it for and wish for.
Half a year ago, and I've said that things are in a concerning state. Finally, other people are starting to say the same thing that I've been feeling. Frankly, when I saw people talking, I went, oh, thank God, I'm not alone. I see it in my friends lists. I see it in the number of people active in my link shells or my free company, or simply people that I know that raid, that used to do so much more than just raid log, now just are raid logging. And even many of them have quit because they either quit after clearing top or DSR, which, oh boy, let's not go down that rabbit hole of the pacing of ultimate content and savage content this expansion, burning people out hard. Rest assured, that's a topic that I do not feel has had the book closed yet. I don't think it should be closed. But we lost many extremely dedicated players. You don't clear DSR, Dragon Song's Replies Ultimate, and then go into the Omega Protocol Ultimate and then not absolutely love this game. They got burnt, though. Really bad. And I can say I've keenly felt it in game. The canary in the coal mine, something is wrong. Something is very different this expansion versus what we're used to with the normal drop-off. We have had a little bit of drop-off every single expansion, factual, but never to the level that I've been noticing it for the past little while. I did a video recently talking about reward structures in game, and I won't go into much detail, I'll just summarize it here. There are so many pieces of content that have been added, like Blue Mage up to level 80 cap or Criterion Dungeons, which are missing major incentive drivers to get those players, to drive the players into the content.
Exactly. I think this is the biggest problem, the incentive to play said content. And there is tons of content in the game. It's also quality content. We can't deny that there had been thinking about content to make it better, to improve it. Crystalline Conflict. This is the best PvP we ever had in Final Fantasy XIV. To be absolutely fair. And the raids are absolutely decent. I still prefer them gameplay-wise over the Nier raids sometimes, or in most of the cases. And we still have one left that's coming in the next patch. But sometimes you just lack the reason to play the content, because that's what every MMO strives for, and MMO content in general needs to succeed at. Not having rewards, a reward structure that is implemented well, is killing a game more quickly than you can actually think and realize.
Instead, however, we're seeing a lot of awesome stuff being put directly into the cash shop. Shadowkeeper, for instance, would have been an intensely awesome, badass reward to get people to clear the Shadowbringers Eden raid tier on Blue Mage. Now, let's take steps past that video. There's the summary. Sometimes incentives are useful to get people to just try things that they wouldn't otherwise. Take Baldesion's Arsenal. That is a piece of content with a very, very loyal, dedicated following that is still to this day active. Baldesion's Arsenal is 5 years old now, yet it is inarguably, without a doubt, not even questionably, more popular than Criterion Dungeons by leaps.
Yes, because of rewards.
Many players would never have honestly tried it and went into Baldesion's Arsenal if it wasn't for the reward structure to get to the door. And then they were like, oh, wow.
I mean, there's a fact why people are watching my old relic showcase videos, because they want these relics. It's simple as that. And how do you get these relics? You do old content. And Baldesion's Arsenal is one of the parts of it. And you also get the LED armor, which is absolutely unique in this game. It's so easy. Square Enix just hire people that are developing content like that. They're developing rewards, gear, sets in between the sets that we already have. And you fixed it. You fixed it. You have great content that people want to play. Just get out rewards. It's as simple as that, really. Up the graphics in 7.0, get the reward structure overhauled, and this game is in an amazing state. An amazing state. And
wow, I love this, let's do more. They were hooked. But incentives matter, and types of incentives offered matters. I do risk going against some of my friends, they know I love them, but I'm not convinced item level is enough to incentivize players, which has been recommended by some. Why? Because as some have noted, I haven't even touched the Savage tier, nor have many others.
the problem about that is item level doesn't matter in the game. If item level would matter, give you anything that your character stands out with, or actually have something to show off, or something that, oh, look at, I have the new gear that is getting me some buffs on my skill XY. But it's not doing anything. It's just making you basically stronger, and you don't have to combine the gears anymore. You don't have to combine the stats or find out the best stats for you like you did in the past or had in the past. Everything's gone. Everything is just baseline. You have item level. You can clear Savage. Savage is the hardest fight. Of course, Ultimate, but Ultimate is not so gear relevant in that part. It's always just gear relevant to the connected tier content that is being released at the same time. But it's just how dull it feels. Everything just feels dull. You don't have a big way and a big motivation to get geared. Especially on the item level department. So item level doesn't matter because it's not mattering for the game at all. It's just, I have my check marks, I have reached certain points. Now I'm basically just improving my rotation. And that's it. That's everything you need. In WoW, of course, you can always see this as a bad example too. Because I know there are lots of players that love the Final Fantasy simplicity on the item system. But it's just a bad item system when you look at the longevity of the game. That's definitely a fact, because when you just have to craft stuff to get into raids, then get stuff from the raid and your weekly stuff done, that's all you need to gear up. That's just not enough involvement, in my opinion. And that's definitely a big concern for me, and a problem that I would love to be fixed. And I think we had players already mention that in Stormblood, and even before that, especially content creators that played the game for a long time, have talked about this problem. It doesn't have to be the greatest item system. It doesn't have to be Diablo-like with the complexity level, or Path of Exile, or World of Warcraft, whatever, but just give us something more that is worth playing the game for, and kind of having something different than the other players have. Not that everyone has the exact same gear and deals the exact same numbers of damage. That's just a bit too flat, in my opinion. And that had been for the case for 8 years now.
Personally, in the category where I don't personally give a flying fuck about my item level at this point. My attention is on clearing ultimates. I will speak on that later, but Savage and getting best in slot right now isn't at it with me. I just don't care. Now, a valid question is asked.
Me too.
Why? Because in the current state of the game, item level in best in slot is kind of worthless outside of a few niche scenarios, such as, say, you want to farm Criterion dungeons faster. Which, if you winced and asked, what? When I said that, yeah, unfortunately that's exactly my point. I personally can point to nearly 100 raiders that I've known or been close friends with, many of which did clear DSR, or rather plenty did both DSR and the Mega Protocol, or are working on the Mega Protocol still, who look at the Savage tier and the gear and the item level and just wonder, what's the point of this item level? Bunch did it, but the motivation was far from item level. They're like, why would I want item level? Is there another ultimate? No, there's not. Okay, so I don't care. And that's kind of their perspective. Lots just didn't do the tier, with no ultimate raids being left for them to prog or prepare for a bunch, just kind of let it go. Realistically, 7.1 will be the next ultimate in, say, what, 12?
And yeah, you also don't have any other content to use that gear for. For dailies? I mean, come on. That's definitely not a thing. In WoW, I always had the feeling whenever I got PvP gear, Conquest gear, back in Wrath of Lich King, for example, or I raided Ice Crown Citadel, and I didn't do that on a professional level or anything, but I had my raid group there, and it always felt like, oh, nice, I got this trinket now. Now I'm blasting through the overworld content. I'm blasting through my dailies. You don't even have dailies here in this game. The dailies we have, you don't fight. You just click on stuff. You go from one NPC to the other. And that's the problem, I think. You don't have any place to use that gear. Even if you get the Savage stuff and you are way stronger than before, which is definitely not a thing. For example, if you just get the whole crafted and over-melded and pentamelded crafted stuff, you're not that much weaker. you can just do everything without any problems. You will blast through expert dungeons. You will blast through your dailies. Most of the dailies you're doing, you're synced down. So gear doesn't actually matter except for the content you're getting this gear in. And that's the biggest problem, in my opinion, for the gear in Final Fantasy XIV. Gear doesn't really matter that much. Gear hasn't a significant difference between the best and the starting gear from each tier. But it also doesn't matter in all forms of content. In just 2 pieces of content, which is Savage and Ultimate, and maybe even Criterion. But yeah, like Cole said, there are no rewards for Criterion, so why should you do it? Except for having some fun with some friends. But yeah, I think you get the point. Here, gear doesn't matter because you're not having content where you can use it in. You don't have dailies where you can blast through. You can feel the power of your character now. I think the only way of using gear is having a warrior geared up to the teeth and then going back into old raids and doing them solo. That's my only point where I feel like gear is awesome. I feel the difference between having the 6.5 gear compared to the 6.1 gear, for example, the starting Endwalker gear, or anything like that, or even being a Shadowbringers level character and power character. That's where I feel the difference. And I think that's an iconic element of how you feel yourself in the world getting stronger, your character becoming a stronger self. And that's a very important aspect for many players. I at least can attest that to players that have the same background as I have and maybe enjoyed that aspect for a long, long time. Getting player progression, your character progresses by becoming stronger, showing that off in all sorts of content, not just the content where you get this gear in. I think this is actually the core problem of the item system.
Months. That might even be too optimistic to say, so people don't hold it to me. I don't know if September of 2024 will have a new Ultimate Raid. So at level, I'm not convinced it's a great reward. Maybe
there will not be any Ultimate Raid.
And they're like, oh yeah, I need best in slot. Then you kind of ask the question like, what are you going to best in slot for? Oh, so because I just want best in slot. And it's like, But you know what? For some people that works. If you're into that, totally do it. Do not let anyone, including myself, ever tell you not to. If you like that and that's what makes you happy, totally go for it. I 1000% support you if that's the case. Another concern of mine is content longevity. We have beautiful content introduced like Variant Dungeons or Island Sanctuary, truly, genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful and clearly, attentively, lovingly developed content. But when we do look at Variant Dungeons, people run them a few times for the mount and then that's it. It's done. And that's a painful shame. Like seeing something that like that genuinely feels bad to me because it's just beautiful content, but people just don't have any reason to do it. Or Island Sanctuary, which I think is a great addition to the game. Outdoor furnishings can be placed for everyone.
The easiest solvable way of getting something for Criterion, just introduce the whole Shadowbringers relic rewards or the currency that you need to get progress in there. Put that into Criterion or attach that to a Criterion 2. You don't have to replace it. You don't have to replace the content that Shadowbringers offered or that people want to do with Bozja or maybe Zadnor. But if they can't play it, attach that to new content. It's not that big of a deal because I know you did already. You did that with the old relics, attaching this to new content. You could play your dailies and get rewards for the old relics. Why can't you just introduce that to Shadowbringers, Bozja? Maybe that's because they think, hey, when we drop down the necessity to play the Shadowbringers relic content too, we lose even more players. And I hope that this is not the mindset they have about this, but just connect these things. Connect the loose ends to a whole end again. You have so many loose ends in this game that you just need to connect to one circle. And if that circle is connected and completed again, I firmly believe players will return and have more fun in playing the game right now. There are a couple of things I really enjoy, like PvP. It's in the best state that it ever had been. But there are also some loose ends. Like it doesn't feel like solo shuffle in WoW. I don't get the satisfactory moment of getting my rankings up because it feels super random sometimes. And that you're not having the impact on the winning rate that you can have in a solo shuffle environment, for example, because the interactions are just simply more strategical and more tactical in WoW. We have to admit WoW's PvP is just a bit better. tad better than Final Fantasy, maybe even more than a tad. But on the other hand, you don't have any group constellation content in PvP, and that's one of my biggest problems. I would love to just play with my wife, do this PvP stuff. She's a PvP player. She had been playing with me in WoW for 10 years now. And she always dropped the game as well and wanted to return to Final Fantasy because she loves Final Fantasy in the context of Final Fantasy, the world of Final Fantasy, way more than she does WoW and its world and Azeroth and all that stuff. But we're not able to play this amazing content together, and that's a big bummer for us. We kind of fall back to playing Fall Guys because that's where you can play together. You even have a duo format where you can really push yourself and get to the win by working as a team, working together. And that's a shame. That's really a shame, a big loose end that they haven't connected yet. And it's definitely not super hard to do, though. And in all honesty, if they think about, hey, when we introduce the dual ranked system, it will definitely decrease the active participation of players. No, you haven't tried. You can't actually think about this. And I would say it's always better to try something out than just staying on something that doesn't work. My opinion, but I think that's definitely something they should consider doing.
It's a huge game changer. But if we look at Island Sanctuary activity itself, it's largely become a spreadsheet simulator. Like you enter into the
Zepla said so too.
And that's kind of it. And I do say that the customization
never did it.
And outdoor furnishings are marvelous and sorely needed in our continuing Final Fantasy XIV housing crisis. So we at least give players the options for apartment for indoor items, Island Sanctuary now for outdoor. I'll never say Island Sanctuary is without merit. Also, the rewards for doing Island Sanctuary, let's back it up for a second. Those rewards are 100% worth it. That's why I was pointing out
rewards are fine there.
At the lack of rewards, because I really do think Island Sanctuary rewards with the motorcycle, alligator mount, the glamours, and the rest is totally worth it. And yes, obviously I also do enjoy catching the Pokemon. That aspect of Island Sanctuary I most certainly do enjoy. But the gameplay loop and the project management spreadsheet copy pasting is a little less exciting than one could have hoped for. Lastly, no, I'm not done with talking about the relic. And I love you guys even if we disagree, and I really do mean that. I think disagreement is healthy. I really do. Just because you disagree with someone does not mean that you hate them. Where have we lost this? If you disagree, it doesn't mean you hate them. But there's no way that you can tell me and convince me that we needed a second tombstone weapon, that this is actually a solid alternative to a relic questline. Because that's what we really do have with Endwalker's supposed relic. Really is a very far from best in slot, worse than standard mainline tombstone weapon. I see it at this point as not even being a relic. Like I don't.
Very well said.
I feel like this is a tombstone dump that in and of itself could be great and could be awesome in parallel to an actual relic as an alternative to people who just 100% lazily farm out some piece of like cool looking glamour. I don't want to bloat this video, but that's a significant gameplay loop completely lifted and tossed into the garbage from the game. That's not to mention the pain felt with no exploration zones, which exploration zones spans like the last 5 years of content between Stormblood and Shadowbringers expansions. And if you look at Stormblood and Shadowbringers expansion numbers just from that same Lucky Bancho census, they were pretty healthy. They were growing. It was clearly a good thing, or at least a part of a really good thing. And Boja and Eureka was extremely rewarding novel content. It broke the mold. It provided warps in the rules of the fabrics of the game.
Yeah, and story content too.
Different forms of battle content.
Very good one.
Significantly more bitey than our supposed expert roulette, while still being extremely accessible and not needing you to schedule them into your calendar. Because at this point, most people are so freaking sick of scheduling stuff into their calendar. I don't know about you guys, but my gosh, I don't like scheduling much into my calendar unless it's going to be
I never do.
a Valexander group, in which case I will probably most definitely be good scheduling that into my calendar. But aside from that, I think Boja was definitely a step above Eureka. How to say it? I love Baldestin's Arsenal, but I also think Delirium Regane was awesome. I think the Lost Actions in Boja was a fantastic system.
Boja is better than Eureka, in my opinion.
Maybe make the actions free. I don't really think that, I'm getting too deep. I just think critical engagements, the 1v1 me bros, I think all of that content going into Castrum Lacus Latori, I think all of that was beautiful content. But now that's gone, with no real replacement right now.
Yeah, and I can agree on this. I feel like Boja was definitely a good successor to Eureka, and especially in Zatnor, because Eureka had a big problem of inaccessibility. players that never invested time into this content, it was so hard to get into it. And the more time had proceed on and the more patches and more tiers came to Eureka, the harder it got to get in there. Because you could not find groups that started at Animus, then went to Pagos, and then Pyros. It was really a disaster of getting access to it. That was my biggest concern about Eureka, to be fair. And that it was kinda overwhelmingly grindy at some point. But Bozja kinda fixed all of these problems. I'm not a big fan of the lost actions. I felt like they were too gimmicky. And sometimes I felt like the skirmishes and critical engagements were too rushed. You always had to be in a busy rush when going from this to this. They should have focused more on less of these and then have them more difficult or being more excited. But of course, the critical engagements actually were quite nicely designed raid fights. You can see them as raid fights, and that was definitely something I love doing. And even though I haven't finished it, I was always having this at my radar. I could feel, hey, there's content that I still need to do and want to do, and this is something I'm kind of missing now. I still haven't got all my relics, of course, but yeah, the incentive to get them is definitely way worse because I just have to do my dailies. I can do them whenever. We have 1 year, nearly 1 year when the next expansion comes out, which means I have plenty of time to get these relics. And if I wait for the next stage to be released, I can definitely see if some of the jobs are actually worth playing from the start or getting the relic from the start again. It's really a tough thing. I know that some people love the recent relic, but I feel like Cole is absolutely right about this 100%. It doesn't need to be a relic weapon here. They could just have a very cool looking tombstone weapon because they know they kind of messed up some other stuff. They don't have the exploration zone or anything that is kind of similar to Bozja and on the scale of quality like Bozja is or Zatno was. And yeah, they could have kind of shifted some resources and development effort on that department to have more variety on that space, more weapons available, more designs on weapons available, but still something that is kind of similar to the exploitory content. You could work with your A ranks, S rank content stuff. You could work with the world. And I think that is the biggest problem of Final Fantasy XIV, and it always had been. You are having these awesome and amazing zones and areas, but you're not doing anything in there. You're just doing A rank trains because it's the best way of getting your tombstone cap every week. The best way of farming your relics right now. It's the absolute number one best way to do that, but that's the only thing that's taking you into these zones, and except for the dailies maybe, but the dailies are trash. In my opinion, dailies are just a time sink. You're not actively doing something that's fun. In my opinion, I hate the dailies in Final Fantasy XIV. They're kind of nice from the story and how they introduce certain factions and characters. That's definitely something that's really awesome. But what you're actually doing in these dailies that have been trash since Realm Reborn, these dailies and Beast Tribe quests are horrible. Absolutely.
So to recap and put a stamp on it, fundamentally we have an incentive problem for amazing content.
Yes.
Most 100% content has a longevity problem to boot.
Yes.
We've also seen massive chunks of the game's mid-core, more casual content lifted. I'm going to be very direct with you guys. It is hard at this point to point at, oh hey, this is what a casual player in Final Fantasy XIV can do in Endwalker. Do expert roulette to grind tomes to get better gear, to do expert roulette a little faster, even though we all know that the hunt train is better for tombstone farming. Why don't I hear other creators talk about the hunt train? I don't know, but it is better than
hunt train is the best
for tombstone farming. So it's kind of which saying all this in this video brings me no joy. It really is kind of deflating to say any of this. Don't get me wrong, I've had to do multiple recordings. I'm like, wow, you sound really depressed in that recording. Let's do another. I love Final Fantasy XIV and its developers, even if they have no idea who I am and I'm just a no-name nobody who
I guess they have an idea.
Great content creator from a country that's just the USA's hat. What the fuck's wrong with them putting a leaf on their fucking flag? Regardless of any of that, I love this game and its devs. Don't care if it's one way. I love them. But yeah,
it's not one way. I don't think so.
For a while, and seeing these numbers finally inspired me to speak up, even though I just want to zip my lips, keep just grinding ultimates. That has been my focus. We'll talk about that in a different video. But frankly, guys, the canary in the coal mine told us something was up. And now, with the Lucky Bancho numbers, it's kind of improving. And I think that's actually a crying, horrible, awful shame.
All right, so yeah, very good video by Cole. Thank you so much for providing us with this content and providing us with all the content that you have on your channel. Always check out your guides about relics when they first come out, because I basically just spend my time on showing them off on my channel. So I'm actually not having time to farm them. So that's when I check your guides. So Cole, you're the biggest help about this topic. I'm always checking out your guides about this first. So yeah, nonetheless, this is something that is a concern, not a doomsday. It's not something, a prophecy that this game is going to be dead in the next year or anything like that. Nobody is saying so. There are just some indications that the game is on a downward spiral, and we want to avoid this downward spiral. We want to help the developers that have provided us with amazing content over the years, in the same way that the content creators did for WoW. WoW had been in a horrible state in Shadowlands. We had a discussion about that. Maybe you have seen this on Asmongold's channel or anywhere else, between Panda TV and Bellula, that Panda TV is claiming that Bellula is always negative about the game, to ride the hype train. No, he's just providing content in the way that the game is calling for. There are trends that people are just having no interest in playing the game, or there are certain problems with the game, or we have allegations about sexual harassment in a company. So yeah, hell, that's something you need to talk about, point out. That's not just something you can ignore because of, yeah, the game has awesome points. Ignore the allegations. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal. You have to talk about this. And we're very far away from something like this. It just only feels like we have a problem in the shifting of resources and staff member in Square Enix right now. And they have kind of overtaken them with Final Fantasy XVI, in my opinion. Just developing this as a side project hurt both games. Final Fantasy XVI had the potential to be one of the best Final Fantasies out there, even beating the classical golden era Final Fantasies. But they wasted that potential because they rushed the end through and kinda left the character's development at a certain point where it actually started to become very good. And they just dropped it there, or made it unrealistic, or just not very believable. And that's my biggest problem with 16. And you can feel the problems on the 14 side now too, because the Endwalker start was awesome. I love the Endwalker story, even though it had flaws too, in my opinion, but that's just very subjective. Overall, I think if you take it as an objective approach and watch it from very many distances, and when you take a look from it, and when you take a look at it from many perspectives, you can definitely say it's an awesome expansion overall, and a very nice conclusion to the story that had been developed in for 10 years already. So that was definitely the high Endwalker quality. Then they had the raids. Pandemonium is definitely an awesome raid. We have Top. That's top-notch content. DSR, I think, is considered one of the best ultimates from many players now. So, hell yeah, that's awesome content. Endwalker provided this content. But the big problem is that I feel like we lack the person to have been taking the hard decisions. And that makes sense with Yoshida and the high staff members taking responsibility for 16. Somebody needs to step in and tell the others and developers that are just doing the hard work for them sometimes to stop. It's just nothing more than, hey, that's not working out. We have to change the formula here. And I know they are kind of restrictive on that. Square Enix doesn't tend to change the formula at all, but they need to change the formula. Now is the time to do it, and it's not changing your game into WoW or into even closer WoW clone. You are a WoW clone. Yoshida admitted that already. But you have to get back your strong arguments again, work on these arguments, and definitely start getting rid of your flaws. And that is the item system and reward system. Nothing else. It's just that simple. Item system, reward system needs to be fixed, and this game is awesome again. I would still say it's maybe fix the server delay, however you do that, for PvP, and it could even beat WoW in that department. In my opinion, I would never raid in WoW again, because of course the item system is better and you have incentive to play that set content more, but yeah, playing my character in 14 is so much more fun. It's so much more engaging and enjoyable to have real rotations and do stuff properly and do fights properly. So I would never actually raid in WoW again when I know there's Final Fantasy out there. Yeah, work on your strong arguments, on your strong traits, and try to defeat the weak ones. And I think this game is in the top spot, that maybe even better than ever before, because if you're taking a closer look at Shadowbringers' big hype, the same formulas were implemented in there as well. We just lack the exploration zone now. We lack some in-detail parts of the content, but overall it's the same game. Let's be fair, it's definitely not so different from Shadowbringers, where on Shadowbringers this game had been on a big hype train. So yeah, I think it's not much that you need to change or work on, but you definitely need to. And I think we now can hopefully at some point come to the conclusion that we agree on this all together, and that we will hope for 7.0 to solve these problems and be in a very hopeful mood to the future of Final Fantasy XIV. Okay, so thank you, Cole, for having us on this video. Definitely check out his channel. Definitely check out the comments under the video. I've actually seen some of the comments. They're very good community posts. People are having very good thoughts on comments on YouTube. So if you ever want to think about something or talk about something, check out the comment section under the videos like that. You will find very good comments there that actually sum these things up insanely nice. So I can just rant here and ramble, because I'm no native speaker and my brain is just missing the capacity to formulate some logical thoughts and very well articulated ideas and then translating them into English. That's always my problem, so I'm sorry about that. I'm trying my best, and I think I have improved a lot since I started this content creation. So yeah, thank you, Cole. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and of course, like always, don't give up the hope for Final Fantasy, because it's still strong and it can still be the king of the MMORPG genre in 7.0 or maybe even after that. So yeah, we are hoping for that. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep loving Final Fantasy.